Welcome. I'm Evelina from Spirituality with Evelina, and I'm your tarot reader, I'm your spiritual advisor, and I've been guided to bring you this interview because I've been thinking about how many misconceptions, how many misunderstandings, how many fears people all over the world have about death and dying process and life after life. So I have a great pleasure to introduce to you a medium, Joshua Zappi, Principal Director of Operations at Aini Healing Arts Center, shaman, medium, end-of-life transition guide, and anthropologist. In 1993, Joshua had an ability to connect with the dearly departed and loved ones on the other side. Joshua started off with Roman Catholic upbringing, mixed with multiple spiritual disciplines. Joshua attended William Patterson University when he obtained a bachelor's degree in anthropology. In 2011, the universe answered his prayers through one of his college professors, a chance to change his life and his direction. Joshua began his walk with the sacred in 2011 with his now sweet wife, Denise, and he came to his path a broken, shattered, and deeply scarred man. Joshua took on the shamanic path, which helped him clear out the old patterns, heal wounds he thought would never close, find empowerment, open his heart, and rewrite the ending of his story. Joshua now uses his gifts and abilities to help others and their suffering through empowerment. He uses his words to speak directly to their hearts and uses mediumship to connect loved ones heart to heart, bridging the space where words fall short. Welcome, Joshua. I'm so happy that you agreed to this. I'm so happy that you are here answering our questions. I find this subject is so important because people fear, people are in denial, and believe it or not, somebody already sent me a message. Stop, don't do this interview. Don't bring the subject. People really have fears, and we have to let them know that death is a part of life. It is definitely a difficult subject, but it is a part of life.
Definitely.
And that's why we have you here. And I want to ask you, the first question I want to ask you is, when somebody we love dies, and we have this question, what happened? Where are they? So what happens when a person dies?
Well, I first off want to say that thank you for having me and for conducting this.
Sure.
For society and for people in general, death is a sensitive subject. It is something that we basically put in the back burner of our mind, and it's something that we don't like to think about. And I think with facing it and looking at it and understanding that we all have expiration dates, it just depends on when and how, to befriend death, I think makes that transition easier. So the way that to answer your question, the way that the guides have explained it to me, and this is to remove all religious viewing around it, or for those who don't have a religious view or don't believe in an afterlife, my connection with my guides has explained it as there's a process. So when we leave our physical body, there's an adjustment period. There's a period of time for us to reacclimate, to reconnect with our spirit selves, to kind of shift. We've been used to being in a body. Now it's time to reacclimate to being back in spirit. And the way that it has been explained is, in my process, we are met by the family and the loved ones and the friends and all the people that we have known in life, and they are there to greet us and welcome us home. And in that moment, they are there to like celebrate our return, like seeing an old long lost friend or rekindling that connection and that relation. And then there is another kind of after that celebration occurs, there is you're taken by your guidance or whoever to do what we call or have people have heard a life review. So we kind of go back through our lives and we look at the lessons and the things that we have done and we kind of review them to see our impact. So maybe like what we've said to somebody that was mean, and see how that affected them, or how we said something that was nice or did something that was nice and how that rippled out. And the different options and outcomes and decisions that we could have made in our life, we get to see the outcomes in the past that those could have taken us in life if we had chose them. And it's a learning process. It's an ability to review, to face the things that maybe you didn't want to face in life. There are things that, come up to the surface, but it's all about growing, healing, and then reconnecting with the spirit. It's all part of that lesson. And then after that, I have been explained by spirit that you can either choose to move on, or you have the choice to stay. Mm-hmm. So there is a choice in everything. Some people, some people can choose not to have a life review and just, or they do it while they're living. Some of us on this shamanic or spiritual path sometimes already see parts of our life review and clear through it and make changes while we're in the flesh. But for the most part, that's something that's usually reserved for after we pass. And then, of course, we all cross at some point, but we get to choose when we cross or if we don't.
Great. So basically, what you said to me reminds me of as if we are born into the spiritual world and we kind of take a little bit of time to adjust to being there. Just like we are born into this world, we are not right away adulting. We kind of being this baby and like growing into it a little by little.
Exactly.
So it's the same way. And yes, I had a glimpse into the transition process when the family members are welcoming the soul into the spirit world, and it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. It was so touching to my heart. So thank you for clarifying that.
And that also, brings a lot of peace to people too, because if they don't, I think in the spiritual arena, when we see that, it brings hope. Right. The support and the love is there even after we leave. And, after we leave this incarnation, we don't abandon our loved ones that are still in the flesh, but we're also got support again on the other side. And I think this is important to share too, because Spirit also shared with me that, when we're born, there is a physical team on this side welcoming us into this world. They come to receive us here. So on the spiritual end, we're having a death coming from spirit world into the physical. And when we die, there's a spirit team ready to receive us after our death and to welcome us home while the physical world experiences the death process. And we have a team on that side ushering us forward. So I think it's important to look at it that way, because then it brings hope that there's people waiting.
Yes, and it makes us realize we're never alone.
Exactly.
We always have support available. Mm-hmm. And that also, somebody asked about reincarnation. So are you saying that we also have a choice whether we want to reincarnate or not?
Well, I'm going to put it from my perspective. I don't wish to step on anyone's religious views or the way that they look at reincarnation. But my truth is that we've been around this wheel many, many times. That we have the choice to reincarnate. We have the choice to pick the people that we are born to, and the lessons that we wish to learn from it. And I think that, I can speak for myself. I've had 10,000 incarnations on this planet, each time learning, growing different aspects of oneself. And I think that all of this is important to understand, because if you look at it that way, it kind of also helps to give a less narrow view that, unfortunately destroys the whole thing of YOLO. But you don't just only live once, in my opinion. You have multiple abilities to reincarnate and to experience different forms and different storylines. Shakespeare, I think, had it right when he said that all the world's a stage. Because when we're in life, we're all playing different parts. Whether we know it, we're playing a part for ourselves, and everyone who's coming in is a teacher or someone who is challenging us to grow, or best friends or whatever. They are all teaching and inspiring us, and that's why at certain points in the journey, those people fall away and exit stage left, or however you want to put it. But we also serve a part in their journey and their storyline. So it's important to be aware that we're all playing different roles and wearing different hats.
Thank you. So do our deceased loved ones, do they have ability to visit us here in this physical realm?
Yes.
Okay. So some people, when a person very close to them, maybe a husband, a wife, or a family member, transitions, they are also sometimes, the grief is so deep and they are looking for them and they are waiting for a sign, a dream, some kind of connection, but there is nothing. They say, there's been nothing. It's just dead silence. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not hearing anything, and I miss them. I want to connect. So why is it that sometimes they never contact us?
So I think the best way to put this is that it's not that they're not there. Sometimes, and this goes for my guidance, I don't really do readings for people who have, I should say, I don't do immediate readings after someone has just left the physical plane. There is a period of transition. So they have to get reacclimated, they have to work through some stuff, and I feel, in my personal opinion, I don't wish to interrupt that process. When they're ready, they'll come and find me, or find a medium of their choosing that will convey the message. Some people, I think, and I've seen this with a few clients that I've had in the past, try and focus on one thing that they think that their loved one, loved in life, and is hoping to see that one image. Like, this is how they're going to communicate with me. And most of the time, it's actually something completely different. So sometimes it's just not knowing exactly what the spirit is trying to show them as the connection or evidence that they're there. I have had multiple readings where people pray at the side of their bed or go to their room to seek quiet and stillness, and their loved one will tell me that they're sitting right next to them. Their loved one will say, I'm sitting in this chair watching them. I hear their prayers. I hear their thoughts. I'm holding their hand. I'm wiping away the tears that come down on their face. Like, all these things they are bearing witness to. Or, they may be like, oh, well, I hear, jingling of keys and I don't know where it's coming from. And I'm like, well, that's so-and-so trying to get your attention and letting you know that they're there. Oh, I never thought that was, that could be them. So it's, I don't want to say that people aren't aware, but they just may not know what they're looking for.
Okay, thank you. So tell us, how does a mediumship reading usually go for you?
So mediumship reading usually happens initially with, I don't personally like to guess names. I can sit here if they're giving me a letter and go on all day going through J's or S's trying to figure out the person's name. So what I personally do is I go by feel. I go by if they feel male or feminine to me, characteristics that come through. Sometimes they talk to me. Sometimes they show me pictures. Most of the time, I can sometimes see them standing in front of me. So all of this, each spirit is different, which is kind of funny. So normally I will connect with that, like the energy of that, and then explain to the person in front of me what I'm getting, what I'm feeling, and then we figure out together who we're picking up on. I give them an idea, and then they usually confirm or validate. I do want to make a very important stress here that sometimes in readings, we do not always get the exact person that someone is looking for. So the way that I do readings is it's whoever has the most important message steps forward first. Sometimes your loved one may not be able to speak or does not know how to speak or to convey their message. So you may have a matriarch or a patriarchal figure who speaks for the whole lot of everyone, and they convey the message for, the person who's sitting in front of you. Sometimes, the person that most people want to talk to or whoever they have in mind may come through as second, third, fourth, all depends. So I structure it that way. Some people connect to the person immediately. All mediums have different ways of conducting their work, and this is how mine presents.
So basically, you're telling us that there is no cookie cutter approach. There is the process is different for each reading.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All readings that I've done, each one is completely different. The way that they talk, conduct. Some are strong, some are a little bit lighter. It all depends on how they work.
Mm-hmm. So once you start the reading, how does spirit presents itself to you?
So in that way, I kind of answered it in the previous question, but I can sometimes see them. Sometimes they're standing on the opposite side of the table. For me, everything comes in from my left side. So I normally in a reading will turn to my left, and whoever is standing there is who I'm reading. So sometimes they'll look like you and I, where I can see them physically. Other times it's more of a shadow. Mm-hmm. And other times I'll just feel a presence in the room, but normally when I feel that way, they talk to me more in pictures or I'm picking up words.
Okay, great. Do mediumship readings help people with grief?
I would say they do. A lot of the people that come to me sometimes wonder if at the last hour of a person's life, or just before they passed, or when someone has gotten sick, they wonder if they could have done anything differently. If there's like a lot of guilt, there's words that may have been spoken that they wish they could have cleared up, or I find that just knowing that your loved one is still alive or existing in some way, shape, and form and is still there watching over you is one of the biggest ways that people are consoled. The part that the element of grief, when that ties in, is when they get confirmation that there was nothing else that could be done, that they did everything that they possibly could, that their ancestor is not upset with them, that they died peacefully, like there was no pain. Like the long outstanding questions, I think, heal the people the most. Is like, the ones that like where they kick themselves. When those are resolved, it's a little bit more now just missing the presence of the person. If that makes sense.
Got you. Yes. Thank you. Definitely makes sense. So let me ask you this question. So what is the most common message that our deceased loved ones have for us here? What is it, this one thing that you hear most often?
The most common thing that I hear most is just wanting the people and the living to know that they are still being watched over, protected, and that they're still present. I think the second most common question that, or the most common thing that comes up is usually apologies.
Oh, okay.
In my work, I get a lot of people or a lot of spirit that come through and apologize for certain actions that they did in life. Because, and it's funny, as we've learned in our time on Earth, we learn when we go to school, we learn in our daily interactions. In that life review, we also learn about patterns and things that have happened to us, and some of the things and ways that we have hurt others. So through that learning, they have the opportunity now to grow and come back to the table and say, I'm sorry that I did this to you in life. I'm sorry that I said this to you. I'm sorry for being harsh. So I would say that those two things are probably the top most common things that happen in my readings.
That's interesting. I didn't expect that, the second answer, but yeah, that makes sense for sure. So, you mentioned something about ancestors. So you said that in mediumship readings, you can connect with different spirits from our family lineage, with our ancestors, grandparents, great grandparents, others. Can we ask them for help? Can we, when we struggle here on this earth plane, can we reach to the spirit world and say, ancestors, please help me. I am struggling. I need you to support me.
Yes, yes, we can. We kind of forget that they're actually a resource too. Like they become part of our guidance as well in the afterlife. You know, just because your mother and father or whoever you've loved in this life has passed doesn't mean that they still aren't watching out and trying to help. So I can give an example of I had a woman that came one time who came for a reading. She was having a hard time. And I said to her, I said, I said, you know that your ancestors hear your prayers, right? Like when you're making them like you need help. And I'm like, so I kind of said to her, like the spirit was saying that she was a bit stubborn in asking for help from family. So I was like, it's okay. You can ask, them to help you. I'm like, have you ever said something out loud and then all of a sudden 2 or 3 days later, like this is how it was coming through in the reading. I said it manifests. Like all of a sudden someone comes across your path that says, oh, hey, you can do this to help yourself out. Or, oh, did you ever look into this? And it's almost like your what you've thrown out onto the air has been answered. And she's like, yeah. And I said, well, that's your person in spirit coming forward to help you out. So a lot of our ancestors are waiting in the wings, waiting for us to call upon them to help. They actually kind of like, if you think of it and you're looking at the stage, or in like a theater sense, and you're looking at the stage and the actors are playing in the foreground, your ancestors are like the ones behind the curtain. They're running back and forth, relaying messages, trying to help, guide and pull and bring resources and things that you need into your life. I can say also, speaking for myself, that spirit definitely heard my call, as you read in the little bio. When it came to my wife, my great grandmother brought my dear wife forward for me. We had been orbiting one another for most of our lives without even really realizing it. And all of a sudden, this chance opportunity, the universe, her grandmother, my great grandmother came together and said, oh, hey, and then here we are. So it's wild how the universe works. So I recommend to people not to forget that you have ancestors who love you, who are still here, and who still want to help. Call on them.
Yes, that makes sense. I remember that there was a time, long time ago, when I was kind of unsure where my life is going, and I had a dream. One of those dreams was really clear as day. And my uncle was in that dream. He was kind of coming in this beautiful green field and with his arms open, like he was going to hug me. And he said, you're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I've been okay since, but it was just like such a warm, reassuring message. Oh my God. And he passed away when I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
So I haven't even, I remember him just very small snippets, but I haven't even really like interacted with him except when I was 3. And 20 years later, he came in my dream, and I think that he is still in my team.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And that's the other thing too. It's not just like your parents' or your great grandparents. You have other ancestors that even go back further that you don't even know about or may have never met in this life. And sometimes those people actually will come through in a reading too. So, you're getting multi-generational like correspondence that is coming through. So, you know, you may not know it, but you've got like a whole slew of generations behind you that are wanting to come forward and help. And it's beautiful to know that even the people that you don't know are there to help you as well.
Oh, isn't that amazing? So tell us more about what is ancestral healing and can it occur in the mediumship reading?
So, ancestral healing is quite necessary for a lot of us. We don't know it, but there are a lot of patterns that we pick up from our parents. And when I talk about ancestral healing is really healing the the bloodlines of like, your father's line, your mother's line, going back those generations. But it's not only backwards, it's also forwards. So, for instance, like I can say, my father may have been, a man who was very angry and took his anger out upon me. His anger came from his grandfather, or his father, I should say, my grandfather, and my grandfather was harsh with him, and then my great grandfather, was harsh on him. So it's something that continues down the line. So many people sometimes aren't aware of their parents' history or their grandparents' history of like how they grew up. And so they carry the trauma down the bloodline and pass it on to me, uh, our children. They inherit these traumas or these ways of being. So sometimes in a reading, what will happen is I will get, like, if I was to use you, Evelina, like maybe your father would step forward in spirit and he would come through and he would give you a message and apologize for multiple things that had happened. But then I will get his father coming in spirit and saying, I apologize for what happened to you through my son because I was the one who originated the trauma.
Wow.
So you'll get these kind of like, and then you'll understand there's always a storyline with spirit. And I have come to understand and aware that the story must be honored because every spirit has their own experience. So most of the time I'll find out about your grandfather and his story and what caused him to be that way. So then he'll apologize for passing that to his son, who then apologizes to you for passing it to you. And now that you're aware of it, you can now make changes within your own life to not pass it on to your children.
Wow, that's fascinating. And that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, because a lot of us will break patterns during our existence here. Some of us incarnate into bloodlines to help break those patterns. So that way it stops. It stops with us. And then the next generation won't carry that trauma of the past. They break free and then are not burdened by that weight through the bloodline.
Thank you. So I've heard you saying something about midwifery in dying process, and it could be confusing to so many people out of the spiritual community. What they would say, what are you talking about midwifery when someone is dying? Why would you say that? What is it? Demystify this term for us.
So there is a group of people that are out here in the world and I should say there's a lot of them. So normally when we think of midwifery, we think of childbirth or bringing children into the world. When we talk about death midwifery or a death doula, which is another term for it, it is assisting those who are in their 11th hour and in hospice or, dying of some disease, or just, helping the family. So like, it basically is, you're helping the soul to transition out of the physical into the spirit. So it really has multiple branches. You can do bereavement. You could work with the patient beforehand. You can help them to get their affairs in order, pick out what they want to wear, green burials, things like that, helping those uh, who want to become more intimate and more understanding of what is to come. You kind of hold the space and help the family with the transitioning of their loved one from the earth realm to back into spirit. So there's a lot of them, there's a lot of groups that are out there, especially on the West Coast. I don't know how prevalent it is on the East Coast, but I know that some hospices do have death doulas that do this type of work and help, uh, the people to kind of befriend death and not be afraid of it, and to kind of explain the process of how the body dies, of how the transition happens. And for mediums like myself, normally what I see is, and I had this experience recently, there was a friend of ours who lost a father, and I was there present just before he had passed, was that all the ancestors were around him in a ring, and there was 3 people that were coming forth and talking to him, trying to help him to understand that he can let go, or help him to understand that he can, move on, that everything is going to be okay, and to be there to, like, when he finally let go, to lift him out and take him home. So that's like from the spirit point of view. From the physical point of view, you've got a family who's grieving, who knows that they've got someone who's going to be passing shortly, and they're trying to understand and reorient their mind to what life is going to look like without that person in it, especially when they were a big part of it. So death doulas are there for the person who is passing, and then they're also there for the family who is grieving. So we kind of do a twofold thing. So it's sacred work. It's beautiful work. I can say now that I'm only 30, but I've seen 50 plus people pass. I've claimed a body when I was 22. And the interesting thing is that we realize after someone has passed that the body is just a vessel to house the soul. The spirit is what animates the body. When you look at the body after, the body it almost looks like, I hate to use this term, but kind of like a Madame Tussauds wax figure. It doesn't look like our loved one anymore. It doesn't look like the people that we knew. They don't have the same energy. The energy that animated them has left. So it's just a change in form. So they found too in a lot of the death doula work that people who have in-home funerals, where they actually have people that are lying in wake in the house, and people get to come over a 3-day period and kind of sit with the body and kind of grieve and be close to that person. They found that after the 3rd day, people are willing to let go of the body because their grieving has basically, they understand or get that the body has passed, that this isn't their loved one anymore, and they're ready to let it go. I think in our culture, and I'm not slamming the funeral industry or anything like that, but the way we handle it is the body gets taken, it's whisked away. You get to go and see your loved one at a funeral home, and then you get a few hours or a couple of days to deal with your grief and know your loved one's there. And then the casket closes, they're put in the ground, and then it's like it's final. So when you get the opportunity to say goodbye and get the opportunity to sit vigil with the body, like in the olden times when wakes were done because they were afraid they would prematurely bury someone, you have the opportunity to kind of take the time to say all the words that you wish to speak. And even in the funeral home, I've picked up on spirit a ton of times, and they all stand in different places, but they are watching their own process. They're looking to see who comes and says goodbye. They're standing there. It's almost like it's part of their life review to see how many lives they've touched.
Okay.
And and then some people are there, so if they were religious in life, are looking to have their final rites given, to be buried in the proper way of their wishes. And then once that's there, they're free to move on in a way. So I know I strayed a little bit here, but really the death doula is there before, during, and after. So we are there for the whole process.
No, thank you so much. Actually, that was perfect because I didn't even know that. And that makes sense because it feels to me like if the body is at home and like in the old times, you kind of gave the family the control to say, I've said what I said and I had my process and now I'm ready to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to when they go to the funeral home and like someone else is in charge, it leaves people kind of still, they may feel like they have not had the proper closure, that someone else was in charge of this. Do I make sense?
Yeah, it's almost like you've handed over the power of how your loved one is handled to someone else. But I also think it's part of our culture because we don't like to look at death. We don't like to feel the feelings that surround death. And and the unfortunate thing is that you're in the presence of all those people, like in a funeral home, or you've got all those people that sit in the front row who are family, and especially the person who's died, let's say like a husband or a wife, the surviving spouse is the one that has the hardest time. So you stand there like, and they're putting on a good face, but you know that they're crumbling on the inside. And, at the end of the day, when everyone leaves, they're still by themselves. So there's a lot of like, I think it's important that you get that transitionary time where you get to grieve with the body, you get to be with the body. Like when my grandfather died, we were around him. The body was in the room. His sister was there, my uncles were there, my father, I was there. The caretaker came to, he had a live-in aide, was there, and we spent time before the funeral home actually came to take the body. So his sister got to process her grief and be there. So I think those are very important, and I think that to take the time, and I know that in a hospital and things like that, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's important to share space with the spirit.
But now it reminds me of, it also depends on the spirit's wishes, because it reminds me when my grandma passed away, she passed away very fast in the hospital and no one was actually there. And, I'm getting she said to me, she said, I do not want anybody to see me like this. I want to go fast. I want to be with God. And I do not want any, she didn't want the drama and she didn't want to be seen dying.
Yes.
So do you confirm that there's also people and the spirits that say, I want to do it the way I want to do it?
I do think that we have control to some degree of like how we wish to go, when we wish to go, and when we're like ready to release. So like in the case of your loved one, my grandfather did the same thing. So 6 months before he had, he was in ICU for a brief period of time because he coded, and they had him in there, and he was right as rain the next day. Like back to like how we're talking now. And then 6 months later, I was supposed to show up to take care of the lawn. The live-in aide that he knew that had been with him for 5 years had to go take a driving test. Like all these things. So there was someone new in the home. The people who were supposed to show up that day did not. It was almost like he had planned because he was just like, I don't want anyone I know here when I die.
Wow.
And that's basically how it felt. And sure enough, that day he passed. So it's, I do think that, there are other times too, like in the hospital, when you have all the loved ones in the room, and then the loved ones leave the room and the spirit takes its final breath, or the body takes its final breath and the spirit goes. There are, I believe, in my own opinion, in my own experience, we do have choice. We have choice to have people around. We have choice to pass in solitude or in a peaceful way. or however we wish it to be.
Yes, I've also heard a story from a friend of mine who, I don't know if that was a friend, but she would not pass away until somebody um, adopted her cat. And all the people would come to see her, and she would just hang on to life until my friend said, well, I guess I'm going to be the person who um, takes your cat, and I will take care of her.
Yep.
And when she said it, it was a minute and the lady was gone.
Yep. Yep.
So that's...
And I think too that, sometimes people will hang on also to hear from loved ones who they may have distance with, or frayed relations, or they may hang in there for a loved one who is in another state to arrive to say goodbye and then leave. So I do think that we have control over that too. We have more control than we know.
That is fascinating. Thank you so much for helping us to understand this process. I feel like we always fear the unknown. The more information, the more knowledge we have about the subject, the easier it is for us to accept, to move with this process, to understand, and not to be in denial, and not to face a lot of emotional turmoil like so many people experience with this. So in the end, what can you say as a medium, as a transition guide, what can you say to help people accept death and dying as part of life?
So I like to put it this way. It's important in our daily day to treasure each and every moment. I think it's important that we speak the words that we wish to say to someone. That I tend to take the approach of no regret living. So if there's something that I can clean up, or something that I can say to a loved one, or there's an experience that I want to have, make time for that. But treasure each and every day. Treasure each and every connection you make. You may not like the work you do in life, but it serves a purpose. But it's not always about the work. It's about the people you're connecting with there. Savor everything. I always say to do that. The other thing too is always make time to smell the roses, because you never know what tomorrow might bring. Yesterday is history. You only really have right now. So I think the best way to answer that question is the way that I look at it. I think for most people and most humans, it's about how we die. That is the caveat. It's not so much death itself. Am I going to suffer? Am I going to have this? Am I going to, all of the beforehand, before we actually reach that threshold. So there are exercises, there are meditations about death and dying, and the death and dying process, and attending your own funeral is even a meditation.
Wow, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, so you have that as well. But there is, so the way that someone can look at this, and to make it really easy, is in the morning when you wake up, your day is a lifespan. So when you wake up in the morning, it's like when you're a kid. You've got the whole day ahead of you. It's what you choose to do with that day. And as the sun progresses through the day, it's almost like how we've spoken about in the shamanic, going around the medicine wheel, or going to each direction. You're going all of those directions during the day. So at night, when we lay down to rest, is it not like we have died? We die every night. Are you consciously aware that you are still in a physical body? Are you consciously aware that you have a house? Do you know where your body is? Do you know that you're here? And sometimes I look at, and I don't want to say that it's the exact experience, but what is dream time? Dream time is almost like being in spirit. Then all of a sudden you wake up and you're back in your reality. But one day, for all of us, we're going to take that final sleep and we're going to wake up in a different world, a different reality, a different place of existence. So, if you look at it that way, what would you do different in your day when you wake up? What words would you choose to speak to someone? What actions would you do to make someone feel loved or to help someone else change their direction in their life? Where are your decisions taking you? And then at the end of the night or when you go to lay to rest, there's always an acknowledgement that we may not wake up tomorrow. And to understand that that release that we feel when we fall asleep is the same as when we die. And I might want to share also here too, in readings, a lot of the times I hear that people are already outside of their body. They don't feel the pain and the suffering. There's a disconnect that is already happening. They are not feeling the pain of their passing. It is the body that is reacting to the need to survive, the need to hang on, the need to, they're already coming and going. It's only, when they make the final decision to leave, that's when the body, so it's interesting to look at it that way. So I would say, get comfortable with it. Do all the things that you want to do in your life. Live. I know we're going through right now the quarantine and all of that stuff, but eventually something gets us. Mm-hmm. It's the fact. Whether we die of old age or we die of disease or whatever, we each have, every day is a gift and a blessing. So seize it. So do what you can while you're here. It's my philosophy. It's the way that I view life.
Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you.
That was fascinating. I mean, I've learned a lot myself, and thank you for clarifying so much for us. So when the clients are looking for mediumship readings, where can they find you? How they can find you?
Sure. So they can go to aynihealingartscenter.com. So for those that don't know how to spell that, it's AYNI Healing Arts Center.com. We have a tab that has online booking, and if they would like to book a reading or more information about what we do, there is, on the online booking, they can choose the day and the time that is appropriate for them, or they can choose their availability. If they have any questions or if they want to find out more and to get in contact with us, they can send an email to aynihealingartscenter@gmail.com, and they can pose questions, or if they want to find out more, they can ask us there. Of course, I'm on Facebook, so anybody who wants to friend me there, feel free.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you, Evelina.
Have a great day. Thank you for your time today.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Have
Thanks.
a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.